Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video on Hypixel Skyblock. So in the last patch, admins finally patched sword swapping. And this was massive on many levels. Now as we've seen, sword swapping was basically the only reason Archer was completely broken in Hypixel Skyblock. And now that's gone. As well as this, a lot of meta weapons like boomerangs and the giant sword are also now completely useless, and many players do not even know what to do. Even the Flower of Truth, a super early game weapon, got completely destroyed in this patch. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the new best weapons in Hypixel Skyblock for all classes. This video will be going over expensive weapons, medium range weapons, and some very high-end weapons. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, one of the worst parts about this whole patch was the completely unexpected Flower of Truth nerf. Now, the Flower of Truth is regarded as the best early game weapon in Hypixel Skyblock because of its good stats, but mostly because of its overpowered ability. This ability made clearing as a berserker go from a super annoying and painful thing to something that was super fast, efficient, and fun. The Flower of Truth made it easy for early game players to get into dungeons and dramatically improved the experience for clearing for people that did not have Hyperion. However, now they completely destroyed this ability by not making it do critical hits anymore. And critical hits, well, let's just say they add quite a bit of damage. Now, the Flower of Truth ability was one of the only things that was really keeping it in the meta. Although the Flower of Truth stats are decent, a lot of weapons easily triumph them. And now with this ability becoming basically useless, let's look at another weapon that many of you might have forgotten, the Livid Dagger. So here's the Livid Dagger, and as you can see, it has a variety of stats. It has the highest crit damage in the game, it has decent damage and strength, and it has that massive 100% bonus attack speed. This weapon is only going for 6.2 million lowest bin right now, and it has such impressive stats, as well as having critical hits deal 100% more damage behind, and an ability that lets you throw the dagger piercing multiple enemies. I used to be a berserker myself, and I can say with certainty that the Livid Dagger did way more damage per second than the Flower of Truth. This is because of its critical damage, and mostly the attack speed. And now that the Flower of Truth is no longer that good for clearing, if you have a Flower of Truth, I recommend selling it and getting a Livid Dagger. It will give you more DPS, a variety of better stats than just some strength and a little bit of damage, and I greatly recommend it. However, if you're a berserker, then this Flower of Truth nerf might have a special place in your heart, because the Flower of Truth is one of the most respected weapons in Hypixel Skyblock, and it being nerfed was catastrophic to so many players. How are you supposed to clear mobs at a high rate without Hyperion now? Well, now let's look at the second really good weapon in the meta, the Shadow Fury. When was the last time that you used the Shadow Fury? If you're a new player, you probably have never even used this weapon. Well, the Shadow Fury actually is a really impressive weapon. As you can see, the Shadow Fury has 13 mil lowest bin at the moment. And this is dramatically more expensive than the Livid Dagger. But just hold on and look at these stats. 300 damage and 125 strength, as well as 30 speed. A very, very impressive stat pool. But the main reason that the Shadow Fury is good is because of the ability. The Shadow Fury ability has been really underrated and kind of clowned on. And the reason it's really bad is because if you use the Shadow Fury ability in floor 7, it causes Wither Miners to do something called nuking. Nuking does hundreds of thousands of damage, and it's a super easy way to basically ruin yourself and all your team's lives on floor 7. However, the Shadow Fury is actually really good for clearing. The Shadow Fury has a 15-second cooldown, which is a lot more than the Flower of Truth. However, I've found out a really good combination with the Shadow Fury, and let me show you right now. Alright everyone, so now I'm in a dungeon and I'm going to be borrowing Nekrova's Livid Dagger for this test. And alongside this is my Shadow Fury. Now it does not really matter that my Shadow Fury is maxed out, because I'm going to be showing you guys how good the ability is on its own. I'll also be using my Ender Dragon, 3/4 Necron, and a Warden Helmet. So let's start it. I just chose floor 3 because it's just a random dungeon. I will be using Berserker class. And now, watch this. I'm going to be holding this, and I can clear all these mobs. Look at that. I just cleared all the mobs in this room almost immediately with the Shadow Fury. Look at that. And I can do it for a variety of other rooms. Look at that. It's like magic. All of them just disappear with the ability. And at the same time, I can use this Livid Dagger. As you can see, let's see how much damage it's doing. It's going to be doing about 9 million damage. Pretty good. And as you can see, it's actually a really, really good strategy. It works. And it's a lot of fun. And it gives you clearing times that are very fast. So if you guys do not understand what I'm doing, I'm using the Shadow Fury ability, and then I'm switching to my Livid Dagger. And in fact, that actually works. And the great thing about this is that the Livid Dagger does 100% extra damage when you're hitting an enemy on the back. And the Shadow Fury, well, it teleports you to the back of the opponent. This is a really, really underrated meta, and I definitely recommend any new players to try this out. It costs about 30 million coins to do this, but it's so worth it. So now let's see the Livid Dagger on a Lost Adventurer. As you can see, I can just one-tap it, and then against some more mobs. As you can see, it works a charm. We're doing about 20 million damage backstab with the Livid Dagger, and it's so good I can even throw the Livid Dagger. Look at that, did 2 million damage throwing it. So yeah, this is a really cool meta, and this is why the Shadow Fury and the Livid Dagger are now one of the best combinations available for dungeons. Alright everyone, so now we've gone over the Livid Dagger and the Shadow Fury, and I showed you guys that this combination can be almost as good as the Flower of Truth after the nerf. And now we're going to be looking at a slightly more expensive weapon, but one that I still greatly recommend all the same. This is the Soul Whip. So this is the Soul Whip, and as you can see, it has a pretty massive price tag at 22 million coins for just a very basic one, not even a maxed one. And for a kind of maxed one, you're going to be looking at around 30 million coins. As you can see, it's going to get kind of expensive. Now, why is the Soul Whip even good? Well, the Soul Whip is good because of its great clearing speed, good damage, and multi-functionality. Now, unfortunately, I cannot stand fishing, so I'm not a Fishing 26, but here I'm going to play some clips from a Menacing Banana video where he shows the Soul Whip. As you can see, it's very good for Berserkers for clearing, and for boss fights, because you can left click and right click with it at the same time. Now the drawback of the Soul Whip is that it does not really have very good stats. It can be a dungeon weapon, but its DPS is low because of its Flay ability, which is the only way you can actually attack with it. And it's a little bit awkward to use. But if you have Fishing 26 and you're a Berserker, this can be really, really good. And actually even better than a Flower of Truth for clearing. Now obviously this has a way higher price tag and that really annoying Fishing 26 requirement. But if you have all of the requirements and the cash, then I greatly recommend the Soul Whip. It is good for Archer clearing and Berserker clearing and pretty much any class, as well as giving you some really good lifesteal by hitting multiple enemies. And now it's time to really take it up a notch. I've already talked about this weapon in one of my videos. This is the Axe of the Shredded. Now clearly this is a very, very big jump in price and requirements than anything I've talked about before. But it is without no reason. The Axe of the Shredded, as I showed in this video, I have a card above that talks about it. But anyway, the Axe of the Shredded is absolutely broken. This thing, well, it shoots this thing, this axe, and originally it only does 10% damage, and it has good stats, as you can see, 350 strength and 140 damage, definitely respectable, but the ability can make this do 160% of what it usually does. And that's not the only thing it does. This heals you for 50 health per hit, which does not seem like a lot, but when you're hitting lots of enemies like Terracotta, this will add up very quickly and be completely overpowered. And on top of this, you might think the mana, especially if you're being a Berserker or another class, will be unusable. After all, it's 160 mana with ultimate wise, which is quite a bit. But in reality, you actually regen mana when you hit mobs, meaning that with something like the Terracotta, you will basically not be able to die or lose mana because of the healing and for the mana regen. However, such a good weapon has really high requirements. And if I search up Axe of the Shredded right now, it's going to be a little expensive. As you can see, it's 50 million coins for a clean one, not even a maxed one. My video on this weapon made it go up a lot, so I apologize for everyone who did not get this weapon yet. But yeah, it has a pretty high price tag. As you can see, something that's pretty respectable, it's gonna cost you about 60 million coins, which is considerably more than the Soul Whip or anything I've talked about before. But is it even worth it? Well, if you want to see a full in-depth look at this weapon, definitely check out my video on it. It's really good. But all I'm going to say is that this is the new DPS meta. The Soul Whip and the Livid Dagger, well, they're nice for clearing, but they don't really give you any DPS. If you want a weapon that's extremely strong for clearing with an unlimited piercing ability and range, as well as bonkers DPS against all mobs when it's properly charged up, then I recommend the Axe of the Shredded. It has a high cost, but is 100% worth it. And finally, we're going to be discussing something that you might have not even considered, the Astraea. So there are 4 variants of the Necron's blade: Hyperion, Valkyrie, Astraea, and Scylla. And pretty much the only weapons that are even good, at least to most people, are the Hyperion and the Valkyrie. Hyperion is the best left-click mage weapon and the best weapon for clearing, and pretty much the ultimate weapon. It's just a really nice weapon with intelligence, decent stats, and wither impact. Then Valkyrie is considered to be a less intelligence focused but really good DPS focused version of the Hyperion. The Valkyrie has 60 ferocity, which will become 100 ferocity in dungeons, which is insane. And it's so good for berserkers. But then, way down there is the Astraea and the Scylla. And these are considered the duds. No one gets them. And the only reason someone gets a Scylla is to make a meme about the suspicious Scylla. However, in reality, the Astraea is a really underrated sword. And this is mostly for this one stat, which is the defense. With all of the nerfs to healing and wither impact, and the great difficulty that everything has become in Hypixel Skyblock, being tanky is now pretty much a necessity for the mage class and for other classes as well. If you're a mage that just cannot survive, you spent all your money in Hyperion and realize, wait a second, I can't even survive in the boss. Well, then, I think the one thing you're missing is the Astraea. For the sacrificing of a little bit of intelligence, you're getting 1,200 defense and 30 true defense in the boss fight and in dungeons. Now, this might not seem like a lot, but if you're using Storm Armor, which lacks a ton of defense, it is massive. With the Astraea, personally, I run the tank class in Master Mode and the mage class in dungeons. The Astraea is absolutely overpowered with tank gear, and with my mage gear, I stay alive as well. On top of this, if you're running left click mage, it's still really good, because you can use something like a giant sword to attack and do your high amounts of left click mage damage, And then you'll use the Astraea for maybe healing up or going and taking a step back. And this is perfect because it gives you that large amounts of defense, which is really useful for staying alive. For these reasons, I think that if you're a new player and you're struggling to survive, or even if you're a veteran player and you just cannot get a hold of all these new changes, then I recommend the Astraea. So that's the video, everyone. I hope you learned something new. Tell me if you tried out any of these weapons in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!